Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to use a really good free open source firewall for Windows. It is called Simplewall and you can find it on GitHub. I will drop links to the firewall down in the description. Now, a lot of people that watch videos on YouTube tend to jump around to different sections or watch like 10% of the video. If you're going to use this software, there's some technical stuff to this. And if you don't watch this video all the way through and you're not paying attention, you could completely break a whole bunch of stuff on your system. So if you're going to use this, make sure you watch the video and pay attention. I'm going to be covering some things in details that, like I said, if you're to go change stuff and you can't figure out why certain things aren't working on your computer all of a sudden, it could be because you changed something and you didn't know what it was that you were doing. So we're just going to start out. This is the as soon as you fire up Simplewall, I haven't even turned this on this computer yet. And I'm going to show you why here in a minute. It's pretty simple overall. It uses the Windows filtering platform. That's what this is built on. Unlike, you have other things like, if you were to use a firewall that comes with an antivirus suite, for example, that's built off of its own platform. But here's how you use this. So to turn it on, once you get it stirred up, let's say you're on the main window here. To turn it on, you would click Enable Filters. We'll turn that on in just a second. This allows you to do some other stuff too. You can create your own custom rules. If you're going to be doing something like this, presumably you have enough technology to know when and why you would create rules. So I'm not going to really cover that one. There's the option to enable packets logging. If you want to monitor your network traffic, basically one of the best tools out there that you can use is Wireshark. If you're really wanting to keep an eye on your network traffic, just use Wireshark. Or I suppose there's other stuff you could use, but that's definitely my top recommended one. The other thing up here that I'll mention real quick before we get started and turn the firewall on and start going through this in depth is your block list. Now, this program is designed to block a lot of Microsoft telemetry. Now you can see here when you're scrolling down here, Microsoft spying and telemetry. So it's set to block and it recommends blocking stuff. You can block Windows Update if you wanted to. I very strongly recommend not doing that. That would be a massive security risk if you were to disable Windows Update. I know some people like to do it. It is absolutely stupid. Don't do it. Or go ahead and do it and then your computer's going to get infected at some point. Anyway, and you can also block Microsoft applications. Again, it doesn't recommend, it just says disable, so meaning don't actually block. If you were to enable block, then you would block Microsoft applications. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn on the firewall. Now it's going to pop up with a window here. This will deny network access to apps as defined by the current configuration. Do you want to continue? Now it asks, do you want permanent rules, meaning they will work until you disable it manually, or do you want to do temporary rules which are reset after the next reboot? My recommendation would be to just go with permanent rules. The next thing here is it's got an option to disable Windows Firewall as soon as you enable this. I see absolutely no reason to not have Windows Firewall still run in the background. They're perfectly fine running in tandem. You wouldn't want to have two antiviruses running at the same time. That can cause havoc for your computer. But to have these two firewalls running at the same time, Windows Firewall and Simplewall, it's not going to hurt anything. It runs just fine. There's no performance issues. So my recommendation here would be to just let Windows Firewall still continue to run. I know it's not great. This is why I recommend using a third-party firewall if you're going to use Microsoft Defender. But I would just let Windows Firewall continue to run. Now, as soon as you enable filters, you're going to start getting pop-ups of applications that are trying to access the internet, and we'll start seeing some stuff here pretty soon. So here's our first one. Super important to pay attention here. I'm going to start listing off some things here. We're going to start getting a bunch of pop-ups here. So we'll start covering it. So it's going to say network connection was blocked. Now by default, Simplewall blocks all programs from being able to access the internet. It wants you to figure out what you want to do with it. Now, there's an option to set up rules here. Again, if you really know what you're doing and you know enough to set up rules for stuff, then You know, I don't need to go into detail on that. You already have enough tech knowledge to know about that. If you're just looking to have a simple extra layer of security on your computer, that's really who this video is for. So, you're going to start getting a bunch of pop-ups here. A lot of this stuff is going to be for Windows applications, again, and basically everything else. So you're going to have things like, so I've got Portmaster installed on this computer. It's asking for internet access. If you were to open up Firefox right now, it's going to ask for internet access. So it's going to tell you what it is that's trying to access the internet. It's got all of these other details. Now, you'll have a few different options that you can go with here. You can do ignore and ask me later. Now, in the case of something like Windows processes, you know, let's take MSMP, ENG, which is this is related to Windows Defender. This is the Microsoft malware protection engine. You know, if you were to just click the red X and say ask me later, that program's going to keep asking for an internet connection. It's Windows Defender. It needs internet access to be able to run properly. Now, you can also do this, you know, if you were to open up an application, let's say you for some reason didn't want to enable internet access to it at that time, but maybe you'd want to do it later on when you started at some later point. You could do ignore, but this is whenever this thing's trying to connect to the internet, if you click this ignore and it asks again, you're going to keep getting these pop-ups. Block means that it blocks it forever. Now, it doesn't actually block it forever because you do have the option of coming in here and turning the internet access on at a later point if you want to. And then you have allow. If you just click allow here, it's going to allow network access forever. Or you can click on this drop down and let's say you only want it to have internet access for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 24 hours, whatever the case. So we're going to start going through and clicking through some of this stuff so you can see what's going on here. So I'm going to click block on Portmaster. And like I said, this is part of Windows Defender. This absolutely needs internet access. I'm going to touch on this here real quick because again, you're going to get a lot of Windows processes that are going to ask for internet access. If you don't grant these internet access, a lot of these more important ones, you're going to end up breaking things on your computer. So it's really important, if you're going to block access to a Windows process, research it and figure out, does it need access? I'll go through some of the common ones with you on this video. That way you'll know for sure. I've got this thing tweaked really well to where I don't have any issues with my computer running this, but it took a little bit of playing around to get things to work properly. So next thing, actually we'll come back to SVC host. That's a special case. We'll come back to that one in a minute. So this Windows Defender, so you'll want to allow this one. Widgets, if you're going to use widgets, Windows comes with widgets. You can load those on your desktop. You know, maybe you want to enable those. If you're going to use them, then you would probably need to give them internet access. You know, I imagine like, I don't use them, but let's say you're to use like a clock widget or something, I imagine it would need internet access to be able to sync the time properly. But some of this stuff like Windows Feature Experience Pack, I end up blocking a lot of this garbage, but like I said, it took me some time or trial and error to figure out what I could block, what I couldn't block to still have Windows work properly with a minimal amount of issues with getting stuff to run. So I'm going to say block to these. Okay, let's cover some more Windows processes here while we're on the topic. So LSA-SS, this is the Local Security Authority subsystem. This is mainly for, I'm just gonna pull this off to the side and we'll come back to that in a minute. This is for, this is used for Active Directory authentication. So if you're a home user, I don't see any reason you would be using Active Directory at home unless you're some IT professional, and in that case, you're going to know whether or not you would need to enable this. But if you're a home user, this really doesn't need internet access. SVC host, we'll come back to that one in a minute. Again, this is a special case system. So this is NTOS kernel.exe. Again, this is an important Windows process. Anytime you disable internet access to important Windows processes, again, it's going to end up breaking stuff. Now, if you have enough IT knowledge to figure out what you can get away with, that's fine. Or if you want to do trial and error with this program, that's fine. But this is an important process here. Okay, now we're going to come back to, we keep getting pop-ups. Here's a great example of stuff. This is one of the reasons that I love this program. This MS Teams update. Now, Microsoft Teams comes installed by default on Windows 11. I have absolutely zero use for it. For me, it's bloatware, and I think for a lot of other people, it's bloatware. There's absolutely no reason that this thing needs to be phoning home to Microsoft every 5 minutes. It doesn't need internet access if you're not going to use it. So this is a case where this is completely legitimate to block. So let's go ahead and click on SVC host. This is a special case. Simplewall, when you go to enable this one, Simplewall is going to tell you, warning, be careful. Through service host, internet traffic can be let out through unexpected ways. Do you want to continue? This is a really important process for Windows to function properly, and it's safe to give it internet access, but there's some stuff you need to be aware of. Now, I get the person that made this program was good intentions, but if you don't give this internet access, it can break a lot of stuff in your system. There's a lot of applications that hook in through SVC host to connect through the internet. Windows uses this a lot. I'm just going to allow it, but Windows uses SVC host a lot. This is one of the most critical executables in Windows. So again, it's going to give that warning. Do your due diligence. If you don't want to enable it, that's fine. But again, it could break stuff on Windows if you don't enable it. Now, before we move on, let's cover some more executables. They're not popping up as fast as I thought they would be, but some more important ones. Another one that you'll end up seeing at some point, likely, is WAAS medicagent.exe. That is a legitimate Windows process. And what that does is whenever Windows detects some sort of an issue, let's say an update went bad, or something on Windows needs to be fixed, WAAS medicagent will pop up to try and fix things. So that's an example of something that really needs to have internet access. Task host W. This is another important Windows process here. This, let's say, it does multiple things. One of the things is like if you have some sort of critical issue that comes up with your computer, I believe one of the things that it's designed to do is it will prevent like an immediate shutdown, or like, let's say you go to shut down your computer, you have unsaved data, let's say you've got a Word doc opening. This is designed to prevent Windows from just shutting down right away. It gives you the opportunity to fix stuff. I don't necessarily know that this one needs internet access. I don't really see any harm with it. But again, do your due diligence. If you want to have this running or not, completely on you. Another one that you'll see, SIH client.exe, that stands for Silent Install Helper. That is a process used by Windows Update. It does like background installs for Windows Update. Because it's part of Windows Update, that's going to be one that's important, that it has access to the internet. Another one that you'll see pop up here is system settings. So if you open up system settings, actually let's just go ahead and do that right now. Let's see if it'll pop up. Here we go, system settings.exe. Anytime you open up system settings, it's going to, I mean, this would pop up. So you'd have the option of ignoring this, or I guess you could allow it if you want to. This is something that I block. The prevailing theory with this one is that it basically collects telemetry. This is a telemetry process, collecting data on what it is that you're clicking on in system settings. I don't see that being any of Microsoft business, what I'm changing on system settings on my computer, so this is something that I end up blocking. Another one that you'll see, smartscreen.exe, that is a Windows Defender executable. Really important. Smart Screen connects to the internet. So if you were to run, let's just say I've got an executable on the desktop and I want to run it, Smart Screen is what connects to Microsoft to make sure that that is a legitimate file and there's nothing malicious contained. That absolutely has to have internet access in order to be able to run properly. NIS SRV is another one that you'll see pop up. I'm surprised it hasn't popped up yet. That's another Windows Defender application, another Windows Defender executable, absolutely essential. That one needs access to the internet. Another one that you'll see at some point is device census.exe. That one's pretty self-explanatory. It collects data on your computer. I don't see that being any of Microsoft's business, so that's something that I think you'd be completely safe to block it. I've blocked it. I haven't noticed any issues whatsoever with using it. So that covers this part pretty well. A couple other things I want to cover here real quick while we're on the topic. So these have internet access. You can obviously come in here and disable internet access. Let's say you granted something accidentally, or you want to revoke internet access to an application. You can just come in here, uncheck this, and it will move it down to where it no longer has internet access. Now let's say that you blocked something, but you now decided that you want to allow it. What you can do is come in here and right click. Now again, you can set up rules for it. Here's where you can set a timer. Let's say you want to set a timer. Now if you just check this, let's do LSASS. This will enable it permanently, so to speak, unless you decide to come in and disable it. So this would, let's say you reboot the next day. This is still going to have internet access. Okay, so you can uncheck it, revoke internet access, or you can put it on a timer and say, hey, I only want this application to have internet access for, let's say, a couple hours. You can do that. After that certain amount of time has passed, it immediately revokes internet access. You know, if you were to try this with a browser, as soon as that revokes, your websites aren't going to load. Basically, it's just going to stop working. So pretty slick, really easy to use. There's really not much more to go into detail on here. You can also delete stuff, and you know, you can have the pop-ups show up again if you want to. Okay, here's an example. So Brave is popping up asking for internet access. I've actually got a Brave window open with the site I'm going to show you here in a minute. So I'll just go ahead and allow this one. This is a legitimate internet browser, so this is something you'd want to allow. Now, the next thing, so let's start working through the tabs on here. Next one's going to be services. Unless you are an advanced user, I really wouldn't recommend going in and goofing around with this stuff. I'm not going to get too into the weeds because this video is already at 20 minutes right now, so we're going to keep moving along here. Next thing, UWP apps. Now, one of the things, so a couple different ways you can do this. So for example, you could come in here and give internet access to the Microsoft Store. Now, if you were to open up the Microsoft Store, try to browse to, let's say, an app page. Right now, it doesn't have internet access, so it's going to pop up asking for internet access, or it just will not load anything. So you have a couple options which you can do here. You could come in and grant internet access through UWP apps. Let's say you want to put it on a timer because, hey, I just want to download an application through the Windows Store, but I don't want it to be able to phone home to Microsoft every 5 minutes by just giving it permanent internet access. So you can put it on a timer. The other thing that you can do is, you know, with stuff in here, you know, like Microsoft Teams, for example, this one was just popping up. That was the update. This is the actual application itself. You can either enable internet access to these applications through here, or you can just do it through apps. It's easier to just consolidate and keep it in one place. But if you want to manage internet access separately and do it through here, that is completely up to you. Next thing, Blocklist. So this is what we covered up here earlier. So Microsoft spying and telemetry. Now, what it does by default, what Simplewall does by default, these are a list of known telemetry IP addresses that are used by Microsoft. Now, I'm not going to go into the weeds. A lot of people may already know this. The issue is when you use IP address block lists, unless they're getting updated frequently, IP addresses change pretty frequently. So all it takes is for an IP address to change. And let's say Microsoft changed all these IPs here and moved to a different set of IPs. Then all of a sudden, these ain't going to do shit. So as far as I know, this does block a lot of telemetry. Now you can come in here and turn on extra rules. Now, like you could block Windows Update, for example. Like I said, that's a horrible idea. It's a huge security risk. These options are here if you want them, but I have not noticed any issues with Windows functioning properly by just blocking these known telemetry IP addresses. You know, as far as I'm concerned, you really don't need to be, your system doesn't need to be phoning home to Microsoft constantly. Go watch my previous video on why you should not use Windows Home if you want to see just how bad telemetry is on just like default Windows Home or even Windows Pro installs. Next thing, system rules. This is really important. I'll hopefully remember to make something in the timestamps to mark this as super important. If you're gonna come in here and make changes to this stuff, it is super, super important that you know what you're changing and why you're changing it, and that it could have a big impact on your computer. So we're gonna go through a few things here. Next, first thing is net BIOS. It's network basic input-output system. This controls things like LAN, local area network, LAN connections. This affects things like printers. If you have printers on your network, being able to connect to them. Then you have things like SSDP, Simple Service Discovery Protocol. Again, this is kind of related to having like printers on your local network. You have UPnP, which is Universal Plug and Play. Then you have WS Discovery. I would recommend turning some of this stuff off, but keep in mind, let's say you turn off things like NetBIOS, SSDP, multicast DNS. These are things that I really don't see being necessary running on a home network, with a caveat that, again, if you use things like printers and you turn this stuff off, you'll notice that like if you go to try to print something, your computer is not going to be able to create a connection. You know, like I've noticed this, like when I go to try to print something to test to make sure this stuff's actually working, like I wouldn't be able to print anything. It can also cause other issues. I've also noticed I've found a couple of esoteric apps that were using some of this stuff, and by turning this stuff off, the apps themselves would stop working completely. Now, while we're on the topic, again, if you're gonna turn this stuff off, just make sure you understand what it does and the effects it could have on your computer. The best thing that's gonna help you out is Google. Now we're coming up on close to 30 minutes for this video, so I need to keep things moving along. I'm going to drop this article down in the description. I recommend going and reading it. This covers a few of the things we just talked about, like multicast DNS, NetBIOS, all that kind of stuff. And it talks about some of the issues, the security issues, by having these enabled. By default, they are enabled, and all this stuff works through Windows Firewall. And I've mentioned this before, Microsoft doesn't have this stuff enabled to create issues. I know there's this sub-faction of people on the internet that say Microsoft or Windows is just a pile of garbage. Microsoft does everything they can to sabotage it, make it just a useless piece of junk. That is an absolutely stupid take. I love Linux, but Microsoft works great, and there's no reason to complicate this stuff and attack Microsoft. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. They're not going to design an operating system that runs like pure garbage. They do try and create a good product. Windows works well, Linux works well. If you're one of the super hardcore Linux people, you know, then don't use Windows, whatever. But the problem is that if you just leave this stuff enabled by default, they do it because they have it enabled because it's best for compatibility. You know, if you're to disable this stuff by default, even though it's got some security problems, then someone can't use their printer. Guess what? Microsoft is going to get flooded with a bunch of haters, or a bunch of people that, why isn't my printer working, or why isn't this working? Why can't I connect to a network, something on another computer on my local area network, or you know, whatever. But for people that have a little more tech savvy, this is good stuff to, in my opinion, to disable. You can go read articles like this. I'll drop this one down in the description. You can go read others about why some of this stuff I really think should be disabled, because it just opens up the attack surface of your computer. The more secure, the less attack surface that you have, the less chance that your system is going to get foobarred. Next thing, so all of this stuff is disabled. I'm not going to get into all of this now. You know, like DNS protocol, DNS actually works just fine, but I'm not going to get into this stuff because we're already almost at 30 minutes. But, you know, like you could go to connections. Again, if you want to really monitor network traffic, you need to use something like, I would recommend using something like Wireshark. And I would recommend keeping track of what's going in and out of your network. But that is Simplewall summed up. Now, again, you can use this in conjunction with other software. I've used this in conjunction with Windows Firewall. I do not disable Windows Firewall. I leave both of these running. If you do run into an issue, like let's say a printer, you know, you go to print something and you don't know, let's say you disabled some of this stuff, you don't know what you need to enable to get it to work, or let's say you just need to do something real quick. What you could do is just disable filters. Just click disable filters. It's going to give you a warning saying it's going to restore access for everything that was blocked. So, you know, if you had Microsoft telemetry processes disabled, they're all of a sudden going to start phoning home again. So just keep that in mind. But this, if you're noticing issues all of a sudden when stuff was really working before, this is going to be one of the first things that you should probably check, is disabling this and seeing if you created a rule in here or blocked something and you were unaware of it and it's not working. This is what you need to do to come in here to fix this. Anyway, that's going to wrap the video up. If you like it, go ahead and drop a comment, leave a like, all that good stuff. Let me know if you hate it. Drop a dislike, shit up the comments. I really don't care, and I'll see you in the next one.